In this series of videos, I promised to discuss or to explore the Buddhist identity in 5th century Greek drama, especially in Sophoclean King Oedipus, which is a well-known classical tragedy. In our last video, we discussed how Sophocles portrays Oedipus, the tragic hero of his drama, having Buddha, the most compassionate one, as a model. In this video, I will discuss how Sophocles develops the plot structure in which he presents Oedipus' journey into his own deeper self, which we understand as his attempt to find truth. Before discussing the self-exploration or Oedipus' attempt to find truth within himself, in his inner self, in which we find the Buddhist influence on Sophocles when developing the plot structure, let's discuss the surface structure as anyone else would do. We know that Aristotle in his Poetics explains or presents two types of plot structures. One is linear structure and the second is the complex structure. In the linear structure that we may often see in many of the dramas, many of the novels or short stories, the plot structure or the plot development begins with exposition in which the playwright exposes, presents, introduces the central action of the drama, the central conflict, the central problem of the drama, and then gradually develops it, which we call rising of action or complication, and then the climax and gradual resolution, where the playwright gradually begins to resolve the conflict, the problem, and then the final resolution in which some kind of a solution is given to the raised conflict. But in this drama, Sophocles uses not this linear plot structure, which definitely you may see here, but he uses the complex plot structure in which we find three key terms, key elements that are reversal, recognition instead of climax. Climax is there, but we use the term in a complex plot structure, recognition, and then calamity or disaster. Now let's see how he develops the plot structure here. In the first two scenes, the Thebans' arrival at the palace, seeking Oedipus' help to find a solution for their present problem in the country. We know that there is a famine in the country now. People are dying, lots of people are dying. So the citizens, Theban elders and all the others, most of the citizens come to the palace seeking Oedipus' help. So this is the first scene. We can see Oedipus comes out and addresses the Thebans. And then the second scene, we can see Creon coming from Apollo's temple with the god's message as to who has caused the present famine in the country. Sophocles uses these two scenes to expose the central conflict, the central action of the drama, which we understand as finding the killer of the former king Laius. So, in other words, finding the former king Laius' killers is the problem or the central action of the drama. Then Sophocles complicates the problem by adding some other incidents which we call supporting incidents. That's what I have marked here as supporting incident, supporting action 1, essay 1, essay 2, essay 3, essay 4, essay 5, essay 6 likewise. So these are the supporting incidents with which Sophocles supports the central action, or with which Sophocles develops the central action of finding the killer. But here, as we first discussed, Sophocles uses reversal. Reversal means pulling the action backward. So I'll be clear to you here. We know that Creon comes from Apollo's temple in the beginning with the god's message. And this is a good chance for us to know who the killer is, or identify Oedipus himself as the killer. Because since we know the Greek legend, Oedipus legend, that Sophocles uses for the drama as the subject matter, we know that it is Oedipus himself who killed King Laius, though unwittingly. So when Creon comes, we know that we would be able to identify Oedipus as the killer. Or so Creon may expose Oedipus as the killer, or he may reveal Oedipus as the killer. But unfortunately or fortunately, it doesn't happen. Because God's message is conveyed to the audience not in plain words, not directly, in simple terms, but as a riddle. As a result, we lose a golden opportunity of identifying or knowing the killer. So what we call it pulling the action backward. We are given a promise, okay, you are going to identify the killer, but at the next moment something else happens and that given promise is withdrawn. So this is what we mean by reversal. And then again we get another opportunity when here supporting in action 3, supporting action 2, when Tiresias, the blind seer, the soothsayer, predictor, comes to the palace to help Oedipus to find the killer. Since we know that Tiresias is a seer who knows past, present and future, we know that he has that ability to help Oedipus to find the killer. And we know that. Now this is the promise given to us. We get tensed. But again, something happens here, because Tiresias says that he's not going to tell who the killer is, though he has that ability to do so. When Oedipus asks as to why he doesn't like to say it, he says, by revealing the killer, I may not be able to help you or to help me either. So as a result, these two people begin to fight. Because now Oedipus, who wants to find the killer and help his citizens to get some sort of relief from the present famine, now fails here as this responsible elderly citizen rejects to help him to find the killer. So he gets angry. We know that it is reasonable because Oedipus is we have identified him already as a duty conscious king. He gets angry. Whatever it is, the result is the killer escapes the action is pulled backward. We call this reversal. And then in the next scene, Oedipus fights with Creon. And Jocasta mediates in the fight between the two and tries to console Oedipus, because Oedipus, after listening to Tiresias' accusation, now is so confused. Jocasta tries to console him. This is another occasion in which we find reversal. She tries to console him. In order to console him, she tells him a story in which she tells him that the former king Laius was killed by outland robbers at a place where three roads meet. This reference to three roads reminds Oedipus a similar incident in which he happened to kill an old man. Now this is reversal because she comes to console Oedipus, but she does the quite opposite. Instead of consoling him, she makes him more worried. So I would like to share with you another thing here, because by this time, by this scene, we have begun to love Oedipus. Because in the first scene, Sophocles used the first scene, second scene, and the third scene here, so that we could identify different human potentialities of Oedipus. We identify him as a man with different human potentialities, a good king who is willing to sacrifice even his life to help his citizens, who is worried about the people's lives, people's suffering, people's life than his own life. So we identify him not as a killer, but as a great human being. Therefore, when Jocasta comes and reveals this accidentally, we have begun to love him, and we don't want him to get more confused. And we are given a promise here that she would console him, but it doesn't happen. We are given a promise and then it is again withdrawn. So this is called reversal. And in the next scene, in which a messenger from Corinth comes with the message that Oedipus' father Polybus is dead, and now Oedipus can get back to Corinth and be the king. He meets with Jocasta, tells the message, and Oedipus comes out, and she reveals the message to him, this messenger's message to him. But he refuses to go back to Corinth, saying that still his mother lives there, and he is afraid to go there. But in order to relieve him or get him rid of this fear, Corinthian messenger tells him that his fear is meaningless because they are not his father and mother. Now he reveals this secret in order to console Oedipus, but the opposite happens. It makes him more confused, and now he begins to find who he is, his own identity. And in the next scene, Laius shepherd, who left the city once Oedipus became the king, because he is the eyewitness to Oedipus killing Laius. And then again it is to this shepherd that Laius gave his son, infant son Oedipus, to be killed in the Mount Cithaeron. So in this scene, he comes and he reveals to Oedipus who he is. Oedipus realizes, in addition to that the killer whom he is looking for is no one but he himself, he discovers who he is, the one who killed, that old man whom he killed, and where he is living, with whom. He discovers everything. And before this scene, or in the previous scene, in the end of the previous scene, in that dialogue between Oedipus, Jocasta, and Corinthian messenger, Jocasta, realizing or identifying Oedipus, goes inside. She kills herself. And now, after this incident, this scene, Oedipus goes inside and then blinds his own eyes. And in the next scene, so this is the calamity. Immediately after recognition, everything happens here. The disaster happens here. And then finally, we are given a hint that Oedipus would be banished from the country. So this is the plot structure once we analyze it superficially. Now we can see then here finding the killer as the central action, the conflict or the problem, and then how Oedipus tries to find the killer as the development, and then how he finds the killer within himself, and then the calamity in which Jocasta kills herself and Oedipus blinds himself. So this is the surface structure here. Now what we need to do is to identify or to understand whether there is some sort of Buddhist influence on Sophoclean plot structure. It is here in this deeper layer of the plot structure that we can find the self-exploration or Oedipus' attempt to, a person's and individual's attempt to find the truth within himself, or which we call self-exploration or King Satchagavesi. The central act, as we already understood, is finding the killer. But I would say that, I would identify this as a symbolic problem. Those who have read the Indian writer Premchand's Thakur's Well may know or may identify Ganges' attempt to find water as a symbolic act. As a symbolic act. It's not really, this is a water problem. Now she tries to find water, means the problem seems to be the water problem. But I identify this as a symbolic problem. The real problem behind this short story is not this water problem, but the caste conflict, the caste struggle. Similarly, in this drama, for me, finding the killer is not the real problem, it is the symbolic problem. The real problem is finding one's own identity, one's own self-identity, or finding truth. In this drama, we can see that Oedipus finding the killer, that symbolic problem I mean, not inside but outside. We know that the killer is nobody else but Oedipus himself. But Oedipus does not suspect his own hands. He's so clear of his own hands, as we all do. Instead, he fights with all the others in its attempt to find the killer in the external world instead of within himself. This is what we all do. We don't try to find the problem within ourselves. Instead, we always tend to find the problem in the external world. As a result, we fight with everyone. So this is what Oedipus do here. So he tries to find the killer outside. And then in the next scene, which we identify as in the next scene, in which Jocasta comes out to console Oedipus, we identify as a crucial turning point. Because it is in this scene that Oedipus for the first time gets a hint to suspect himself. Now so far he tried to find the killer outside. He tries to find the truth outside. In his attempt to find the truth, we know that he fights with first citizens and then Tiresias and then Creon. Now here he gets a hint from Jocasta to find this search of truth, this quest of truth within himself. As we already discussed, she tells him a story in which she happens to tell him the place where the king was killed by outland robbers, where three roads meet together. He gets this hint. He begins to suspect himself. Now he turns inside to find the killer. He begins to suspect himself. The next scene is so crucial in this plot structure because we know this incident in which Corinthian messenger comes with a message that Sophoclean's supposed father is dead, and we know that how that Corinthian messenger reveals to Oedipus that his father, that Polybus or Merope, are not his true parents. This is a clue that Oedipus hangs on to identify who he is. Until this moment, he had one problem, that is who the killer is, and then he begins to suspect himself as the killer. He begins to find the killer himself. Now the action splits into two. Now in addition to finding the killer in himself, suspecting himself as the killer, he has another problem, that is who he is, who his parents are, what his birthplace is, who he really is. So this is the real problem here, finding one's own identity, finding truth within oneself, finding truth within oneself. In the next scene, in that shepherd, in the conversation between shepherd and Oedipus, Oedipus comes to know the truth. He comes to know who he is, who the killer is, who his mother is, who his father is, what is his birthplace, what his birthplace is. He recognizes everything. So this is the place where he realizes truth. And he doesn't find this truth elsewhere in the external world, but he finds this truth within himself. And here we have some sort of a quote, some sort of saying by Tiresias, which is really significant to understand this idea of finding truth within himself. So Tiresias, in that battle scene, says to Oedipus, "How terrible to see the truth, when the truth is only painful to him who sees it." Now, here we can see Oedipus understanding, realizing the pain of this truth, or how painful or bitter the truth is. That's why over and over again Tiresias, Creon and Jocasta asked Oedipus not to try to find the truth, not to think too much about the past or the present, past or the future. They always ask him to live in the present moment, because it is in the present moment, if only one lives in the present moment, that he or she can live feeling well. Otherwise, they may not have a better life. Because if we try to explore our own past, we may identify bitterer things than Oedipus finds here. If he thinks of our own future, it would be the same. So that is the idea, or that is why these two people repeatedly ask him to live in the present moment. Live day to day. That's what these earthly people asked him to do. But he is a truth seeker. He is an explorer of self. He is the one who tries to find truth, the reality. And the other people cannot stop such a person. And he finds that truth. He discovers that truth. However much it is bitter, however much it is painful. And immediately after, we know what happened to him. So it is here that you find the Buddhist idea of the self-exploration or finding truth and its influence on Sophoclean plot construction. Let's meet in another video and discuss this concept of self-exploration or the influence of this Buddhist idea of self-exploration on Sophoclean drama, especially his plot construction, plot development. Thank you.